Until you see it on the screen, and you can minimize that.
I'll tell you something. I miss y'all, man. I miss getting to see y'all so much with you're not having council meetings.
Soon this will be behind us.
Yeah. If you listen to TV, tomorrow we're all gonna be zombies. So
Just go there you go. So minimize that, and there we go.
I'll tell you something. I miss y'all, man. I miss getting to see y'all so much.
Carrie, Kelly just texted me and said she needs somebody to go reset the breaker.
Soon this will be behind us.
At lift station 7. Tim, you hear that?
Listen to TV. Really? That well, I'm in a meeting. I can't do it right now, but
All right, you ready, Mayor?
I am.
Minimize that, and there we go.
I'll tell you something. I miss y'all, man. I miss getting to see y'all so much.
Carrie, Kelly
That's the YouTube
just
playing in the
texted me
background.
and said she needs somebody to go reset the breaker.
Soon this will be behind us.
At lift station 7.
We're getting a reverb.
Yeah,
TV. Really? That well,
We got
I'm in a meeting. I can't do it right now, but
All right, you ready, Mayor?
I'm ready.
minimize that, and there we go. All right, so I just pause it. There we go. Okay.
All righty.
We ready?
Waiting on you, Mayor.
Oh, shoot. I'm sorry. Okay. I'm sorry. Hi, Madam Clerk. All right, so the hearing is called to order for the virtual special city council meeting budget hearing, December 22nd, 2020. Madam Clerk, pledge, please.
Well, the council of the city of Harahan was unable to operate due to quorum requirement in compliance with LARS 4219 and will be meeting via video conference. All right. I pledge allegiance to the
The
flag
flag of the United States of America,
and to
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, with
indivisible.
liberty and justice for all.
All right, roll call. Raise your hands, please. Councilman Asbill, Councilman Buddy,
Present.
Councilman Chatelain. Councilman Chatelain,
Councilman Chatelain, you're on mute.
Yeah, I'm mute.
She said raise your hand.
and say present, yeah.
Present.
Councilman Johnston,
Present.
Councilman Wheeler,
Present.
Mayor Baudier,
Present.
Police Chief Walker.
Here.
Fire Chief St. Cyr is absent. Finance Director Todd Tunion,
Present.
City Attorney Scott Stansberry is absent, and Municipal Clerk Nicole Lee is present.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. The only message that I got is, and you'll probably receive it later than this. Well, I'm sorry, we are streaming. Just, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year's, be safe over the holidays. And I'm really looking forward to 2021. Madam Clerk?
2021 budget hearing for all departments. You want to start with administration? I want to go in the order of the agenda.
Yeah, might as well.
Okay,
Straight.
so when we do administration, Madam Clerk, are we gonna open them all at the end for public hearing? Or are we gonna take them just one at a time, run through, and then we'll come back as a?
Actually, you can, there's nobody from the public in the waiting room or in the meeting at the time.
Okay, cool. All right, so we can go administration, council discussion.
You guys want to go through these, any questions in order as they appear on the budget that Todd sent us?
So I had asked Todd earlier today to kind of prepare just some remarks about each one, just some highlights. So if he wants to go through those, and if we have questions after that, but
I like that. Perfect. I concur.
Sounds good.
All right. So I did have some overall comments on kind of the budget process and some of the significant assumptions. I don't know, Jason, that I will touch on each department, but certainly have some overall themes and assumptions that we use to pull together this budget for you and for the public. And so first, the basic starting point for the 2021 budget was the 2020 amended budget, which the council recently approved at either the October or November council meeting. Generally speaking, we've assumed that the operations of the city are fairly consistent in 2021 as opposed to 2020. Certainly, there are some variabilities, which we will get to. But generally speaking, we assume staffing, expenses, and revenues are fairly consistent year over year. Certainly, one other item that came up that we've mentioned in a number of the meetings previously relates to the variability of transactions and activities due to COVID. And that created certain challenges frankly, in amending the 2020 budget as well as the 2021 budget. One brief example, Mr. Buddy had some questions on video poker revenue that he sent earlier today. And we had estimated that based on initial activity through August, okay? And that's what's included in this budget. Well, the deposit we got in November, just 3 weeks ago, and the deposit we got within the last few days was almost $100,000 of video poker money in the last 4 weeks. And so certainly we didn't estimate for that. We didn't consider that. So that revenue was going to be more in 2020 than we expected. And that gave us some comfort with the 2021 amounts that we budgeted, which were frankly less than a normal year still. So we should still be good with what we had budgeted for 2021 as being a conservative number. But that's just one example, and there's not a ton of examples, but there's certainly more than just that one that made it challenging to pull together the 2020 amended budget as well as the 2021 budget. Salaries were primarily based on the employee count in September. Certainly that may have changed, okay? But if you think back to the timeline and when we needed to advertise and kind of pull all this together, that's kind of where we were at the time. And so that's the personnel count and salary information that we used for this budget process. Revenue amounts overall, I'll say that we considered no changes in rates. The council had not approved any changes in rates, at least that I'm aware of any substance. And we continue to budget at similar levels, franchise fees, and the core revenues that the city relies on. On sales tax revenue, that's one of the biggest numbers in the city's budget. So we budgeted that at $2.4 million. That's the gross number. We have some fees, roughly $120,000, $150,000 in fees each year. So there's a net number. But the total gross sales tax was budgeted at $2.4 million, which is less than the actual amounts in 2019, which are about $2.5 million. So roughly 100,000 less than the actuals in 2019. Again, that's being conservative and in terms of the budget process. And then when we looked at the two most recent months of sales tax activity, they were right at the $200,000 level, slightly above. So about 206,000 and 209,000 were the two most recent months of sales tax activity on a gross level. So that gave us some comfort in the $2.4 million number that's in the overall budget as well. That's really the overall comments that we had on the budget process. We've sent it out. I believe it's been out for some weeks now. And we've received some questions from council members and responded to those requests. Still have a few open items that we're working to respond to that will work over the next week to answer those questions for you. With that, Mayor, if I missed anything, maybe if you wanted to add that we missed in terms of the 2021 budget.
Okay, so I'm just gonna just drop some things in that you guys may not be aware of, just so you know. Administratively, we will make some changes in City Hall. We're working. I think we're gonna hire one more new person to coming in to help out, because we are still a little short staffed, and we got into a volunteer situation, which I love my volunteers, but we had a volunteer come in, and that's how City Hall got kind of, looped into the whole COVID phenomenon. So we're going to try to maybe stabilize things here a little bit, and then we're going to work on that. Civil service, I'm hoping that civil service, of course, will be less this year. Court, we may take one of our people from the front office and move it into court, and then have another person come in there. So we're going to add another salary on this year at least. Fire, I'm pretty sure fire is going to be right in line with the budget of where they always are. Maintenance, this year is going to be a big year for maintenance. We got the Wilson Street project coming in. I'm certainly think that we need someone else there. If not, 2 more people. This is going to be huge. And the more work that we can do ourselves, the less we can keep the contractor from doing it. And I think we can do a lot of it in-house ourselves as well. The maintenance is always short-staffed, and it's something that we need to, be vigilant of, just because these projects that are coming, these will be the biggest projects I think Harahan has ever seen, replacing the Wilson Street line and building a dedicated net off of Lift Station 6. Police, I'll let the chief talk to you about that. Recreation, tell you what we got going on with recreation. We've been discussing in talks with NOLA Gold. That is the new rugby team coming to the gold mine on the airline. Believe it or not, one of the owners of the team actually lives here in Harahan. And so if you guys know of any places that we can put them, they want to buy residences. So they're actually looking at the apartments on Hickory right now. They'd like to own, they're looking for 21 units. So I've been putting a word out there. If any buildings are for sale, they want to bring them here and help support our community. That could be pretty big for us to have a professional rugby team living in Harahan, playing at our playground, practicing there, doing clinics, and then having their events right there at the shrine at the gold mine on the airline. Forgive me. Regulatory, we will have a new regulatory director coming early next year. It'll probably come in at half of what we were paying the other regulatory director, although he may spend a few more hours working with the city than the past regulatory director, because this year we're going to make a strong push to really start to nail down getting the city cleaned up. We're going to really push hard this week. We also have Sharila Day out on the street, handing out citations, working with John Boudreaux. So we're going to beef up the regulatory department a little bit this year for sure. I think, our city, the way our city looks is the way we look. And so if city looks good, we look good. Senior center, I don't really know where we're at with the senior center. I got to really dig into this one. They were a little over budget this year because of so many cleanings. And but it's something that all of us as council and mayor really need to go over there, take a look around, and get a better understanding of what's going on. And I'm sorry for neglecting that responsibility, because I haven't really had a chance to do that yet, and I've just been focusing on bigger projects. But I think it's that time that we really dig in and get a better understanding of just what's happening there. Streetlights. So today I met with the Public Service Commission. I don't know if you remember, in 2019. He gave us $300,000 to replace all of the city building LED lights to LEDs, which dropped our city bill from right around 10 to 6. So it's a gift that keeps on giving. It'll save us an additional $4,800 a year on top the getting the basic $300,000 light. So I just had a meeting with him. We're working on that program again now, and this year we're going to go through the city and work on all the street lights, which again should drop that bill from probably 10 to 6. So that's an additional, that's additional $48,000 savings a year. and another gift that we'll keep on giving. So that's incredible. That's pretty much all I got for right now. And then council discussion, you guys can take it from here. Unless y'all want to let Chief Walker go next. Council?
It might be, if we have specific comments, it might be better to take them when, something's said, just
Okay.
suggesting. So my suggestion would be, anybody has comments on what the mayor just said, comments or questions, we handle those, and then we move on to Chief Walker.
The only comment that I had mentioned to Todd T when we were working on this is, right, we don't know what 2021 is going to bring, especially with COVID. So I had suggested maybe we reevaluate the budget after the first quarter.
Yes, ma'am.
Because again, we really don't know. Are they going to lay down more restrictions? Are restaurants and bars going to close? And that's certainly going to be a huge factor in this budget. So I'm feeling very positive in the numbers that we're hearing in light of what's going on. But I had just suggested to Todd, and I'll throw this out to the entire council, that maybe, beginning of April, let the first quarter go through, and we certainly might want to reevaluate, just a discussion, and start seeing some more numbers come in, especially if we start seeing some restrictions come down.
I think that's an incredible recommendation. And let me ask you a question. Can we do it? I mean, would you guys mind doing it in a special meeting setting? And even taking it one step further, Councilman Wheeler, maybe we do it, just because next year is going to be very odd. We'll take it first quarter, mid-year, and third quarter. And then by third quarter comes, you're talking maybe 3 meetings. And
I don't think anybody would be opposed to that. I personally think the budget itself is such a broad discussion, and it's very detailed. I don't know. And I know people feel about special meetings that we're doing things when it's not highly attended, but it's such a huge project that it almost really needs a meeting in itself.
Yes,
but I'm open to if they want to do it at a regularly scheduled council meeting, but we're just going to have to play it by ear, see how the restrictions come in. If there are any, hopefully maybe things get better and things start opening up, but it's going to be a fluid document. Definitely. We felt it this year. It's definitely going to roll over to 2021. And I think it's something we're going to have to continue to have budget hearings a little bit more often throughout 2021 in light of what COVID could possibly bring.
So let me why I'm in so much agreement with you on this, because of our project on Wilson, because of Lift Station 6 and the amount of money that's going to be spent here on this project. And we're working on getting all of them grants and using the rest of the DEQ funding to get this project done and completed. It could be real informative to the public of really what we're doing with basically the $2 million that we're going to spend there. Like I said, this is going to be one of the largest projects that Harahan has ever seen. And it's going to be, it'll help the Blake and that whole community develop there appropriately with all the proper drainage and sewage and fix everyone along the way. And I like it. I don't mind the meetings,
And I don't think anybody here would be opposed to it. And again, we're talking about also just general revenue that comes in on a monthly basis to govern our just day-to-day operations, in addition to the projects that are forthcoming. So it was just a suggestion I meant to mention to Todd, because again, COVID's not over. It's not unfortunately coming to an anytime soon. It's rolling over to 2021. We just have to see to what degree it's going to be at that time. So I think at this point, every quarter, we should have just a hearing. Let's talk about revenues, where we're at, and maybe make adjustments in addition just to the day-to-day, and also in addition to the projects that are being done too.
Yeah. Thank you.
2 comments. I agree, Kerry, that we should do something after the first quarter. Todd, just to have a target date, not etched in stone, if we want to see the first quarter numbers, are we talking 3rd week of April? When should we be thinking about this special meeting?
Well, when I suggested to Todd, I was thinking more maybe, we have the first quarter that comes in, get him a chance to balance all the books and everything. Right. It could potentially be maybe even the latter part of April, right. Maybe even the first week in May. I guess it just depends.
So toward the end of April, first week of May. Okay.
But Todd, you can certainly, I just didn't want to put him in a constriction where he has to have it by April 15th, That's what I was just thinking, either the latter part of April or maybe the first week in May. But Todd, you can.
Sure. No, I would agree that, mid-April would be a challenge to have,
right.
I guess, everything closed out through March 31st in the right way that this group would need it to make decisions, okay? I would agree that late April would be easier on the finance team and myself to kind of meet that expectation. We also will be in the middle or in some process of the annual financial statement audit at that time in April. So not that it can't be done, but just I'm uncertain where we'll be in that part of the process and how that may impact the finance team's time or my team's time. But certainly we can pencil in some date near the back week of April and set that as our goal. That sounds like a good idea.
Right, and if certainly we start seeing more restrictions coming down, which we obviously know is going to potentially reduce the revenue. I mean, we can certainly call a budget hearing at any time just to kind of discuss where things are. It's just that we all know, again, COVID's going to be around and it's going to potentially affect this budget and any possible future budgets, I mean, so that's just my suggestion.
Tim, Mayor, your comment about updating the residents about these massive capital projects and sewerage and any other ones, I might suggest you just have a 5-minute segment at each council meeting and update the public on those projects. There's no reason that you should have to wait to do something in April,
Right,
when you have information in January, February, March. And as you've been providing more and more information, I think you just tacking onto that. I think it would be
Okay.
Appropriate.
you got it. Yes, sir.
So if nobody else has any questions about what the mayor said, Mayor, my comments or questions, you've suggested the possibility of hiring is, I think, 3 or 4 people in addition in 2021. Are those personnel in this budget that we're looking at?
Well, for one, like our new code enforcement officer is coming in at half the price as our other code enforcement officer. So we're paying one a certain amount and then the other guy's coming at half that amount. So just that savings alone right there equals me 2 employees. So we should be very, very good. Because I got 2 employees coming in, that's going to be less than what I'm paying 1 employee now.
And we included an amount in this budget for that employee. It's an estimate. It may be off, but there is an amount included in the budget.
For clarification, there's 3 or 4 new employees being discussed, 1 leaving.
Yeah, 2 in the
regulatory director.
Yeah,
and
2
you're bringing in somebody at a savings.
2, bringing in 2 for less than what I'm letting 1 go for. So.
Okay.
It should be good there. Maintenance, we haven't really nailed anything down yet there. That would be the only other place that I'll add employees. But we're going to kind of play that one by ear.
Well, and here's my comment, Mayor. In 2020, there was a certain amount of stress because of overspending without the council being aware of it.
Yes, sir.
So what I'd like to do, and I think we all would, I think I'm speaking for everybody, is let's get through this year where everybody knows what's going on before it happens and what the effect is on the budget. I think that's the way we all want to do it. I don't think I'm just speaking for me. So if there are new people, please make sure they're in the budget, or before you pull the trigger, let's talk about it. This budget is a balanced budget in its current form. So if you add half of a person or a person and it's not in this budget, we're now talking a deficit. And it may be necessary, we may have to go there, but let's not wait and have the stress that we had in 2020 over expenditures that weren't budgeted, please.
I will be responsible.
Thank you.
Fiscally responsible, yes, sir. And before I make any moves like that, I will discuss it with you guys.
Excuse me, guys, just so you know, maintenance is one of our most relaxed areas we have. If we could get more in the maintenance department, we could handle more of these things. We wouldn't have to sub out as many things. And it's actually going to save the city money in the long haul. Even when we go out, I mean, you call out Viola, anybody like that. I mean, we're being charged when they come out to do things. So if we could pay this in-house, it's going to save us the ultimate money in the long run. So if we hire one more maintenance person, I can't see where it's going to hurt us in the long run. But of course, like we said, we'll have to budget this quarterly, and we'll see where it moves.
Yeah, that was going to be my comment about maintenance. Man, if we can just cut out the grass contract, we can pay for one more guy, and maintenance can cut the city's grass. So there's ways to do it, and I appreciate the mayor thinking about that. So we just need to make sure, like Mr. Buddy said, be fiscally responsible, but at the same time, there's ways to cut other areas that our city employees can pick up certain contracts.
Even tree cutting, tree trimming. I mean, we do a lot with Veolia because we just don't have the staff to do it, and there's a lot of tree trimming and cutting in a tree city. So, we could use, hands there, but exactly, and I mean, I'm not looking to cut the grass guy at all, but if we can do it cheaper and have an employee to do it in-house, we have, I mean, I'm sure he'll understand, but who wants to really lose a financial contract, but he'll have to understand, and because we're going to have to really start to do more in-house. Exactly. And the savings is maybe twofold, So,
and back to the comment of potentially saving money, I agree. If we can do it efficiently in-house, we'll save money, particularly in sewerage. But if we go down that route while we're hiring an employee or employees that are going to be primarily working on sewerage, let's be sure to charge their salaries to the sewerage department, where the savings will accrue, and not general government. And I would think that would be appropriate. Todd, if you would comment.
I couldn't find the mute button. Yes, I would agree, Mr. Buddy. That would be appropriate. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, cool.
We would need timesheets or some tracking mechanism, or an understanding that the person's sole job is sewer stuff and not street signs or other city maintenance. Whatever.
Correct.
Yeah, I don't know.
But as Councilman Chatelain says, and it makes perfectly good sense, if we can use our maintenance department to roll on needs and maintenance items for sewerage, we can probably save a significant amount of money, a goodly amount of money. But we don't want to stress general government's budget to the benefit of the sewerage budget. We want to know what sewerage is costing us. It's just something to think about.
All right, that's it. That's it.
Chief Walker.
Yeah, I got a question for Todd. Am I reading this correct on line 193? You moving the whole police millage into my operating budget? You mute. I can't hear you.
Yes, Chief. It's not 100%. It's the bulk of it, though. It's probably 85 to 95%.
I'm going to oppose to that.
Okay. Would welcome any feedback or thoughts you would have on what the number should be.
I mean, I think based on this year's expenses, it's probably necessary to cover. Is that right, Todd?
It was 2020. I don't expect what happened in 2021 to what happened in 2020.
Right, but I don't think we expected what happened in 2020 to happen either, Chief.
I understand that.
But going off of Todd's first comments earlier, that 2020 was the starting point for this budget. So for him to say that and then to move the entire police millage in, that would be correct on his part to do that because he was basing off the 2020 budget. And that's what we wound up doing in 2020 on the amended budget, I believe. Is that right, Todd?
Correct. And I'd be open to any feedback on what this number should be. If this group recalls, and I don't have the language in front of me, but the language in the millage is fairly broad in that it can be used for salary, compensation, and benefits for the police department. That's a broad definition.
I know, but you're backing out. Okay.
If it's less, look, this could be whatever the council dictates as far as I'm concerned, and so
I
Can be
lost
changed.
about a month being out with the COVID and so with the assistant chief. I'll get with you in the next week or two and look at some figures, what we believe it should be. And I guess you can be those figures with that should be with the difference from the 18 operating expense for payroll to what the increase is by the millage with the raises and that and the difference with the pay raise.
Chief, I would love for us to set up that meeting. I would love to sit down with you and Todd when we go over them numbers.
Okay.
And I think we can move forward with that.
Just from 20,000 feet, the difference between the amended 2020 budget column and the 2021 budget would be usually explained by the $85,000 grant for vehicles. So the budget is almost a mirror of the amended budget for 2020, not what was spent in 2020. So we're not talking about comparing. The 2021 budget is not based on actual expenditures at all. It's based upon the council's amended 2020 budget.
Correct.
But it looks to be pretty close to the 2019 actuals.
But not on a revenue end.
Mr. Buddy, you're talking about the entire police department's expenditures?
Yeah, looking at the 2021 budget for the police department.
You're on page 1, line 23?
I was probably on page, what was it, 190 line, I'm sorry, line. Lost my place here. Give me a moment, please. I'm on page 3. I'm sorry, 5. I need new glasses. I'm on page 5 of the budget.
Huh?
And and 6. When I look at line, let's see, where is it here? 250. Well, let's see, fire department grant expenses. Looks like line 252, Todd, is that correct? Where the total expenses are? That line 252?
I have 256.
Okay, well, we may have a different printout, but I'm looking at this is expenses, 2019 actual, 2,065,000. Amended 2020 budget, 2,141,000, but that's got $85,000 of vehicles in there.
No.
And then the budget of 2021 of 2 million, I got a line through, it looks like 85,000.
So
It's different figures. It's a different.
yeah,
I'm
Mr.
going
Buddy.
off the budget that was sent out the other day with tonight. That's what I'm looking at. That's not the same.
Wait.
figure I'm looking at here.
Mr.
This
Buddy.
is the budget. Go ahead.
I would look at, as Ms. Wheeler said, page 1, row 23. That's gonna have total expenses for the police department, all line items, salaries, vehicles, computers. And I think
I'm
what
gonna say,
your point- and I think what Mr. Buddy's point is that decrease, the negative 103,000 in column H in the police department expense budget is primarily due to 85,000, which is included in the 2020 budget, which was DOJ related funds that the chief
Right.
used to purchase equipment for the police department. So there's only a $15,000 change that's not related to those one-time DOJ expenditures.
And and I'm back on page 1, and I'm looking at line 10, which is the revenue side. Actual revenue in 19 was 720,000. The amended budget was 766,000. That included 85,000 of DOJ money. And then your 21 budget is 707,000.
So
Revenue.
actually, when you back out the DOJ money, there's actually a slight increase in the police revenue for 2021 budget.
Over the amended budget. Yes, sir. I'm saying it explains the difference significantly, and it's a slight increase. It's a slight decrease over 2019. We'd have to go back and scrub 2019. That might have had some grant money in it also. There may have been some grant money in 2019.
All right, I'll get with Todd and Eric after the holiday and we can look at this.
Well, I would
Sounds
like
great.
to participate in that meeting. If there's no other councilman present.
Okay.
I believe we can have both of us, Mr. Buddy.
Y'all just let me know. My schedule is pretty flexible.
I'm pretty flexible also.
Chief, besides what you've already discussed, do you have any other remarks regarding your budget?
There's some minor ones, but they minor compared to bringing that complete or the majority of the millage over to operate.
Now, what's included in the mayor's budget proposal, is it on par with what you requested for 2021 or?
We didn't make, okay. We were working on a proposed budget. We were both out for a month. We've been back not even a full 3 weeks. It's been off and on and just getting caught up in day-to-day operations for things that we need immediately. We haven't had time to finish it.
Where'd Mr. Buddy go?
Well, hold on. I may have turned my video off. Oop.
We lost somebody.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Thought his
I
dog in his computer.
muted because
Okay.
my dog wanted to join the meeting, and I didn't want y'all to have to listen to her nonsense. But I hit the wrong button and turned me off. Or the right button. So on the police department budget, my question to Todd, which he wasn't able to answer, I asked him late last night. He wasn't able to get to it today. A big concern is the police department salary budget. So the question in my mind is, does that number fund the existing police department staff? And Todd has promised to get back to me with the schedule showing current employees and their annual salary or their weekly salary, gross salary. So it's a pretty simple list. And then we'll see how that, if that number's in the ballpark. That's the meat of the police department budget, and it drives everything else. So I know Todd mentioned also that the 2020 amended budget was based upon a payroll in September, I think you mentioned, Todd. So the numbers should be pretty good unless we've had major changes between September and now.
So
We've had a couple of employees leave in the last probably 5 or 6 weeks. 2 police officers.
And you brought in a couple, unfortunately, I'm not sure, we brought
3.
back 2 employees that were rather on the higher end. I'm not sure when they came back in, if it was after September or before.
It was around that time frame. But subsequent to that, we've had 2 or 3 resign.
But again, if we get a current payroll list, last week, the week before,
Yeah.
and we look at the annualize that cost, it's going to tell us if this is in the ballpark. And that drives 80% of the 85% of the entire budget.
Correct.
So, Mr. Buddy, I had the same question. So I called Miss Rena and asked her for a list. And as of, I guess, yesterday is when she pulled this for me. There's 31 employees at a salaries charge, just salaries of 1.294.
Gross salaries.
Yes, sir. 1,294,000.
And what are we projecting here for the year?
1136. It's line 237.
So that's $158,000 in salary that we're currently incurring a year in excess of the budget. And that'll drive another 80% of that. So Chief, the question is, how do you live within the number in this budget? And that's going to be a real challenge. Now, Councilman Asbill, I'm sorry, Jason, at that point. The schedule, and I've been asking for a schedule, but I guess I should have called Rena. Does that schedule include the assistant chief? Because there was one point in time where the assistant chief was in a different line item. And
Yes, sir.
Todd, I don't know.
It includes the assistant chief.
Is the assistant chief in a different line item?
I think I'm the only one in a different line item.
Correct.
So what Ms. Rena sent me includes both the chief and the assistant chief.
On the budget, only the chief has his own line item. All the other police department employees are in the salaries line item.
So I
What
guess,
happened-
so out of that 1.294, we can back out the 56,000 for the chief.
Prior to 2015, the police chief came out of the city hall with general operating with. And in 2015, the mayor moved a lot of expenses into the police department that wasn't charged to the police department to pay us.
Right, but were there salaries that were included in the city's general government budget?
All the elected officials came out of general government prior to 2015.
Right, but we're just talking the regular, there's two line items here. One says salaries and one says salary chief.
Right.
So the
Like I said, prior to 2015, that line item, well, we're on different pages. The page I've got, it's line item 238. That was included with general government. In 2015, it was moved over to the police department.
So if I make the adjustment just from 20,000 feet on the police, assistant police chief, pulling the police chief out of that number you gave us, Jason, we now have $102,000 more in current wages, salary and wages on an annual basis than we have budgeted. And of course, that, if you run that through, that would be about 185% of that. We'd be looking at $190,000 of police department expenses in excess of what's budgeted. So Chief, I think we need to ask you to come up with a plan to put a workforce together that lives within this budget number, because there is no more money. I mean, this is a balanced budget. There is no additional money available unless we start talking about cuts somewhere else.
All right, I think we can ready to move forward from there, and I believe we'll sit down next week with the chief and look over a few different things. I spoke to him a couple of times already. I believe they're a few officers shorter now. That they were a little overstaffed at one point, but I'm not sure where he's at now. But we'll sit down next week and discuss that, and we'll move forward with that.
Yes, sir.
And do we want to address the council? Unless anybody has any further discussion?
I'm just quickly looking through some notes to see, I think.
Oh,
I've
I'm sorry,
covered
Mr. Buddy. I apologize.
no,
Okay.
give me one moment if anybody else wants to chat while I'm doing this.
I just wanted to let you all know real quick, Miss Judy is in the meeting and she is going to want to address the council.
Okay.
So Todd, I have a question regarding civil service. I know we had discussed in the past, and I don't know if it was in a public meeting or if we had discussed it just privately, about moving civil service expenditures to each department that might incur those. Is that something we've done in this budget, or is it just remaining in the civil service department?
So the civil service costs remain in the civil service department at this point. Certainly that can be changed. I think perhaps some of the challenges is that there are certainly some cost from the attorneys and some of their time, a portion that can be specifically identified as either police or fire specifically. Sure. But I believe that there's a portion of their time that is either overall city or maybe applicable to both. And so we certainly can look to allocate that out. Uncertain, of what benefit that may ultimately provide, but certainly happy to make that edit if that's what the council and the mayor asks us to do.
Okay, thank you.
While I would like to see cost associated with the department that is ultimately responsible for it, there's a negative to moving legal and civil service costs into a budget for the police department. As we all know, the police department, the police chief gets to spend his budget, or there's an argument that can be made for that. So if you put $50,000 in there for legal and civil service into the police department budget, he can spend that money in a good year when it's not incurred. He can spend it on something else. And we can do that just so we all focus on the fact that the police department's budget is the police chief's budget. Not a line item budget, I guess. We put it in as a line item budget, but it's my understanding that he spends it as a total budget.
Right. So I guess, yeah. So I guess that's a good point to where we should have, and I don't want to call it a side sheet, but a side sheet on a breakout for our purposes on the percentage of expenses within civil service, not so much putting it into the budget. And that also might bring up the conversation, if it is just, the police chief's budget, right? A lump sum budget, and it's not particularly a line item budget. Perhaps as a council and a city, we should consider, and it may not work the way that funds flow within a city based on all the different revenues, but, putting the money into a bank account for the chief, for him to manage. That way there's no question that, he expends that money, and that's his money. That's his pot of money. So.
Jason, if that's doable, I like that idea. My concern is it may not be doable. I think if the police chief incurs an obligation, it is the city's obligation. So the fact that there may not be money to pay it is not going to relieve the city of the obligation. I hope my gut feeling, because it's not a researched opinion. Sure. I hope my gut feeling is incorrect, but I think every department in the city of Harahan, when they incur debt, the city's responsible.
And I think the argument about the civil service expenses was it gives the council as a whole in the city to see exactly how much each department costs the city. So if there's a civil service meeting that's related to a fire issue, then that should be billed to fire. But I mean, that's open for discussion, vice versa with police.
Yes,
And that's where I
yes.
think it came. I understand that there's no money budgeted, Mr. Buddy, or we allot X amount of dollars, but it also gave a ballpark on exactly how much it costs for each department to run. So I think that's why it became an issue. But I agree with Todd right now. I mean, there is no money allocated in any department for expenses. It's sitting in civil service. Of course, if there's a hearing that comes up, Jason, and there's expenses, we can certainly discuss that at that time.
And go ahead, Todd.
Well, just to add to Kerry's point, Mr. Buddy, and perhaps what we can do is keep the attorney fees in a civil service department, but have multiple expense accounts within that department. One for civil service police, one for civil service fire, one for civil service overall, or it's
I like that, to identify where the money's being spent. That's good
Correct.
accounting.
Correct. And the other thing that did come up when we had reached out to the attorneys, a number of the attorneys a few months ago in working on the 2020 amended budget and answering other questions the council and the mayor and the police chief may have had relating to these items. And that previously, no one had asked the attorneys to separately identify these costs on their bills. So when I asked some of these questions, they were unable to answer how much time exactly did they spend on police or fire. So I think if that's something that the city and the council wants, and it seems to be a reasonable idea, we would want to reach out to the attorneys somewhat soon. So starting January 1st, they can start tracking their time in a way that would allow them to provide that information.
I think attorneys have to track their time that way. And I think if we just say, do it, give it to us, they have to break it out. They can't just lump sum bills. That,
No, Mr. Buddy, don't. So they track their time and it's detailed, but they can't tell me exactly, or it's not already done on the invoice.
Okay, you have to go in and add it up.
I would have to go in and add it up, or they would have to go through each invoice last year and say, okay, was this police or fire? And some of them they may not remember at this point.
Well, hopefully the description on their invoice is detailed enough. And if it's not, the city shouldn't be paying it. It's just having dealt with a lot of attorney invoices over the years. I would think that their description tells what the hourly or minute charge is for.
It does. So just to clarify that the detailed invoices the city gets for civil service are detailed and provide descriptions. But I don't know that I have enough information with just that to allocate it or to guess or assume if it's police or fire.
So while we're talking about civil service, that was one of the 3 items I want to touch on before I'm finished with my comments. We budgeted $20,000 in this budget for 2021. The actuals, the projected 2020 budget is 63. Now we know last year was not a pretty year. $20,000 in legal fees for civil service is a huge drop for 2021, and I'm thinking it may be optimistic. So we need to have an idea somehow, and there may be some personnel issue or laws that maybe the chief can't tell us what we're looking at, but we need to have some idea of refining that 20,000. Is it, I hope we can reduce it from 63 to 20. That would be good news and certainly moving in the right direction. If anybody's got any thoughts on how we can refine that number for estimating purposes, I'm all ears. Because right now I think it's a swag. Todd's got an idea.
I have a thought. So maybe the first starting point. So while that is the amended budget, let's look at actual amounts through today. I mean, we have all the bills through today or this week, last week, that the finance team can look through. And so we would have 12 months or nearly 12 months, 11 months, and we could estimate December. And that might get us at least a more accurate number for the complete 12 months for 2020. May not be different than the amended budget of 63,000, but at least that would be factual, known information that we could attempt to use to base a decision on. And then, you know, if that number needs to be adjusted, I would welcome any feedback from this group to adjust it.
On a related note, we get minutes from planning and zoning, we get council meeting minutes, but we don't get minutes from civil service meetings. And we've got a paid court reporter, because that person's job is not to keep minutes. But is there any reason that the council and the citizens don't get minutes of civil service meetings? Is there any legal reason, or has it just never happened? Does anyone know? Because I'd like to see minutes of their meetings also.
Mr. Buddy, I'm sure if we, from this date, move forward effective immediately, I'm sure the Civil Service Board and Secretary, I can't imagine, Mayor, and you can elaborate when, we can request them to provide us minutes.
Everybody good with that?
Be able to work with us on anything, I mean,
Yeah,
of course,
I'm
we're
sure.
doing it. I'm sure it can be transcribed some kind of way, and that's why they have a court report.
I mean, and their conclusions. If we have something, we don't need to have transcribe the whole meeting, but at least what is decided. Last year, if you didn't go, there was no published result. So it was rumor mill, it was Facebook. It would just seem that minutes of their business concluded might be the word. Jason, you may be able to help me with this.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't know what the legality is on that, because I mean, every judge hearing, I mean, basically it's a hearing, right? And then but you never see minutes of it. Place
Well,
that JDC published.
We
Oh,
just
no,
we
just
just
the
appointed
opposite.
we just approved the appointment of a new civil service secretary at the last meeting, and she's an employee for the city. So I'm sure if we ask her to put together some minutes just saying what the matter was and what the conclusion was, I'm sure we can get that done. I don't think that would be a problem. And it's a public meeting, so it's not something that would be privileged.
I would agree.
I'd like to move in that direction if there's agreement, because I think it would be helpful.
Okay. We actually have the secretary, she's on the Zoom meeting tonight, and she would like to speak to that. Would you like to speak to Carrie Husis? I'll
Absolutely.
unmute her. Okay.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So the minutes are done by a court reporter only when there is the presence of an attorney, because we have to have that record. It has to be transcribed word for word. If you give me a certain date of meetings, I can absolutely get you those transcripts and email them to you.
Carrie, I'm not interested in transcribed minutes of 3-hour meetings.
Yeah, no, there's a summary page that she provides.
Well, I'd like to see that. If you could send me a summary page, send us all a summary page. We may say that's appropriate or it's sufficient. Okay. But if there is a meeting that is not attended by a court reporter, then I would still like to know the matter.
Yeah, I'm responsible for those minutes when there is no court reporter. So I can absolutely get those to you.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have 2 other comments that we can get through in probably 2 minutes. I noticed that we don't have anything in here budgeted in the way of capital fund expenditures. Mayor, do we have things that you're planning that we should be scheduling with estimates for capital expenditures.
Right now, the only thing we have is coming through Colonial, and we have the DEQ money that's going to handle a big part of that, and then we're working on a grant, which I know it's not permanent. It's not 100% till the money's in our hand. We feel very confident, and we are going to get some help there. But sure, I mean, what we're doing in our first phase of Wilson will all be coming out of DEQ money. And then as we go and we'll go from there, then we'll start being able to get a better handle on if we'll have to pull capital money, which, I try to be tight with capital money. So,
but I guess to get a grip on them again, if you have things that you're planning on, if we can put it down on a piece of paper and put an estimate for the cost, and then comments on what the revenue source is. Is it coming out of capital funds? Is it 40% capital funds, 60% grant? Because right now we have zero information.
We have it all. We have a full report done on it that we've worked with the engineers and everybody, and some dollar cost estimates as well. And I can certainly get that over to you.
I'm thinking that maybe get it to Todd and let him include it in the budget.
Yes, sir.
And we can wait. We're going to be having a vote on this next week, right? The 28th. Yeah. So it may not be done by then, but it certainly, I think, belongs in the budget, and it's a projection like everything else. And part of what you're talking about, Mayor, I believe, is sewerage department.
Yes, sir.
And if we do plan on spending any capital fund money for sewerage department, like I believe we did in 2020, the council has to approve it. We ought to be thinking about that, because it's basically now a restriction in the amount of money available in capital for other needs. So if you could work with Todd on that and just roll that in. The last item I have,
Mr. Buddy, real quick, just to go off of that, if you look on line 698 of page 20 of 22 under highway, street and maintenance, there is an expenditure of $250,000 already in this proposed budget.
so I'm sorry, Kerry, what was that line number?
It would be line 698,
Thank
page
you.
20 of 22, under highway, street and maintenance. There is already an expense under the capital for highways, street and maintenance of $250,000.
Okay, I see that.
So so there is some money in there. And I think, again, we were still trying to be a little bit more potentially conservative of where we're going to be going into, but there is $250,000 in there.
Yep. And what my thoughts were, and I appreciate it, I did overlook that.
Okay.
But I guess I'm thinking that we're probably going to, potentially, we're going to be spending some capital fund money on sewerage department projects.
Sure.
I would think that there's enough information available today to project at least what we know of, and to get it in here, because it's going to hit the sewerage department. Part of it's going to be funded by this capital budget. I may not have a clear understanding of how that works, Todd. So that'll be something else I'll learn a little bit more about this budget cycle. But it kind of tells us what's unencumbered if we do that. Because right now, if the mayor has a plan, that's going to require, say, I'm pulling a number out the air, $300,000 to come out of capital funds to finish the Wilson Street project. Then in effect, our capital fund has an encumbrance of $300,000 in it. So we ought to have that in here so we know what the balance is, so we have a feel for what's available for other capital sources. And the last item I have is in the sewerage department budget, looking at line 766. I think we have potentially underestimated that cost. I know it's not the general budget, but it's the sewerage fund by as much as $400,000. And the way I came up with that number, and it's not real scientific, but the budget for 2021 is, for that line item, is 326,000. Through October of 2020, we spent 331,000. And if this is like many of our other expenses, I would think we have 3 months more of invoices. One we would have received in November, one we'll receive in December, and one we'll get in January for December that Todd and the audit will ultimately pull into 2020 expenditures. So we're running at over $30,000 a month through October. So if you added another 100,000 to October, you come up with 441,000 versus the 326 we're budgeting for next year. Now, I don't know. I don't have enough information, and I'm sure Todd doesn't have enough information to do any kind of reasonable estimate for 2021's sewerage repair costs. And this is what Councilman Chatelain is saying. We can maybe save a lot of this money if we do it ourselves. Certainly worthy goal to look into that. But so I guess what I'm saying is the sewerage fund is projected to generate about 170,000 to the good in this year on its fund balance. But if that line item's off by 400,000, it means the sewerage fund is actually running in a negative, a deficit position, if you need to put another 400,000 in that line item.
Mr. Buddy, so I thought, so you keep making reference to a $400,000 error. So I thought the conversation was that the number should be 400,000.
100,000.
Right, right. So I don't mean error, but the consideration perhaps to increase this amount would be 100,000 and change.
Yes, correct.
Not,
correct. It's 100.
Not 400. Okay.
Yes, sir.
And certainly that's an estimate. I mean, we get invoices from Veolia. You know, the mayor's aware of the timeliness of some of those invoices or lack thereof. And, you know, and we get those on a quarterly basis. So we won't know the fourth quarter 2020 until late January, early February 2021.
And 2019 was 394,000. So something in the 400 or 400 plus range for the year for that line item is probably more of a better historical estimate. That's it for me, folks.
I move we go to address the council.
Okay. Are we open to address the council? Madam Clerk?
Let me get Miss Judy. All right, Miss Judy.
Hear me?
Yes,
Okay, I have some questions concerning the budget that weren't addressed tonight. There are numerous line items that are under budgeted for 2021, considering the amount spent in 2019 and the amended 2020 budget, or the actual spent through October 31st, 2020. Revenues include general government in 2019 was $1,445,097. That was the actual amount received. The amended 2020 budget projects $1,380,925, but the 2021 budget is projected at $1,375,144, which is much lower than collected in 2019. Since everyone's taxes went up this year due to the reassessment of property taxes, why are we projecting lower to collect lower taxes in 2021? Also, let me get into this. Hold on. For the police department, you projected to spend less in 2021 than we spent in 2019. That's not reasonable. We have to, if we're going to spend less in 2021 than 2019, we should be in great shape, but it's not. I'm not going through the whole budget for examples of this. They are evident to anyone looking at the budget. However, I have found some extreme examples. In the police budget, for example, line 7, well, I have line item. I don't have your line item number. 712-112-40820, legal fees and lawsuits, which Ms. Wheeler said she was hopeful that we would not have the same expenses this year as last year with our civil service situation. The amended budget, oops, wait a minute. The amended budget 2020 says $15,000 was budgeted, and the 2021 budget also says $15,000 is being budgeted. But the city's check register through October 31st says we've already spent $72,065 in just civil service, legal fees, and court reporter fees. That means you've underfunded the 2020 budget by $57,000 plus, and if nothing changes, the 2021 budget will be shortchanged too. Also, the police retirement match was $260,978 in 2019. The 2021 budget is projected. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, I'm sorry. But where was I? We've already spent to $360,865 with 2 more months to go. So how can we project less than we have already spent in only 10 months? Before I go into the next line item, can somebody tell me who is the officer that works with the DEA grant? Hello, I'm asking for a name.
I don't know if they want to release that.
He works
Okay.
undercover.
Yeah, undercover.
Who works undercover? Well, I have a name, but I'm not sure that's him. The grant is for $6,000. The expense for the grant is $6,000. So that's a wash. So how do we pay his salary?
It's not, he doesn't work off of a grant.
He doesn't work off of the grant.
Correct.
So we're paying a salary supposedly for him to work undercover. And so what is the benefit of the grant? If it's a clean wash, what is the benefit?
It's not a clean wash, Miss Judy. That's something, I mean, if the chief wants to chime in and explain, it's, he gets these, when they make these drug seizures and stuff like that, we get funds from that, from the Department of Justice. And it brings in enough money to triple his salary.
Well, where is that in the budget? Because I didn't see anything about that in the budget.
Well, I need some clarification from Todd on that one. Hold on one second. Okay, on my page, it's page 5, line item 189. And you got 7,500 in there. Is that right?
Correct. The overtime portion, chief, is a wash.
Right,
I think
okay,
You'll see 7,500
okay.
in the revenue and the expense.
When that person works, we pay his base police officer salary from 2018 with no benefits. If he works overtime, we, the city, is reimbursed for the overtime. Does that make sense?
Okay. Well, you said he's got a $7,500 that came in from that grant.
No, it's not a grant. It's reimbursement for overtime that we paid
So
him.
that's $7,500.
I'm sorry?
That's $7,500.
It fluctuates. Depends how much overtime he works each month.
Uh-huh. Okay, so we aren't paying for his overtime, but we are paying his salary.
A base salary from 2018, whatever a police officer made back at that time with no benefits.
Okay. All right, so as far as I can see, I have a salary of $20,000 plus some few dollars. Am I about right?
I think it's probably about 30, 31, I believe, in that neighborhood.
Well, this is only through October 31st.
Okay.
Okay. So there are many examples of really questionable projected revenues and expenditures for the 2021 based on the actual 2019 and the amended 2020 budget. It should be restudied and amended in order to project a realistic budget for 2021. And what I've heard tonight doesn't give me any confidence, let me tell you. Y'all really need to sit down and talk about this because you got so much stuff that's unbudgeted and under budgeted. It's not funny. That's all, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, is there anybody else there that wants to address the council?
You're muted, Madam Clerk.
I said, no, ma'am, nobody else. That's
I
it.
make a motion to close address the council.
All right, motion by
Second.
Councilman Phillips, second by Councilman
Second.
Buddy, second by Councilman Buddy to close address to council. All in favor?
Yay.
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 0 nays, address to council is now closed. If you guys want to discuss anything else, please say it now.
Move to adjourn.
Okay, motion by Councilman Asbill, second by Councilman Johnson to adjourn. All in favor?
Yay.
Yay.
5 yeas, 0 nays. We are adjourned. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
And Merry
Merry
Christmas,
Christmas,
everybody.
guys.
Merry Christmas.
Happy New Year.
Click on it. Don't click nothing. Just drop down and see.